Every visionary has a common enemy, the critic. You know the type, arms crossed, eyebrow raised, lurking somewhere in the back of the staff meeting, just waiting to pounce when you say, "Hey, I've got an idea, let's try something different." But here's the truth that no one tells you. Critics aren't the problem. The real problem is ignoring your critics or trying to win them over with bland ideas. Because the secret to school transformation isn't avoiding pushback, it's designing such a clear, compelling vision that even your harshest critics can't help but lean in. And when you do that right, those critics become your loudest cheerleaders. That's the kind of shift we're talking about today. Hey, it's Danny, and welcome to Better Leaders, Better Schools, the original ruckus cast for visionary leaders who want to do school different, even within a traditional system, so they create a campus experience worth showing up for. Thanks to ruckus makers just like you, this show ranks in the top 1% of over 4 million worldwide podcasts. So thank you. Today, my guest is Doc Chris Jones. He's been on the show many times. He's a friend. We've hung out countless times. I love this guy. And he's really here to share some great stuff. But here's his bio. Chris has been an educator in Massachusetts for 24 years. He's finishing his 17th year as a building administrator. He is a teacher-centered principal and passionate about continuous improvement and the idea that success is not a destination, but a process. Chris is the president of the Massachusetts State Administrators Association and was the Massachusetts School Counselors Association 2022 School Administrator of the Year. He has a podcast and book that I love, I highly recommend, called Seeing to Lead. The book and the pod, they amplify teachers' voices in an effort to improve education as a whole, promoting what Chris calls his just cause. So that's improving the educational experience for as many people as possible by being purposeful, acting with integrity, and building character. Chris has also recently wrote 2 picture books. I'll show them here. Isabella and the Storm, and Isabella's Unexpected Gift. I really recommend those 2, and he wrote them with his wife, Mary. So I hope you enjoyed today's show. Thanks again for being here, for pressing play. And right now we'll get in some quick messages from our show sponsors. Want to know how top schools create collaborative learning environments that actually work? ODP Business Solutions has equipped innovative educators for over 3 decades. Visit odpbusiness.com/education and let's make a ruckus together. That's odpbusiness.com/education. Community beats compliance every single time. The Ruckus Maker Club is your on-demand network of bold school leaders designing the future of education. Join today for $100 a month and get coaching, on-demand courses, AI prompts and custom GPTs, and all our automatic school frameworks and tools within our private digital community. There's no more PD that puts you to sleep. We have on-demand coaching and pop-ups throughout each month. It's real leadership fuel. You're going to love it. Go to club.ruckusmakers.news to join the fun and start your Do School Different journey. That's club.ruckusmakers.news to get started today. IXL takes the guesswork out of lesson planning for teachers. IXL's ready-made lesson plans are aligned to your textbooks and state standards, so teachers can turn to IXL for the exact content they need to help their students. You can get started today at ixl.com/leaders. That's ixl.com/leaders. All right, here we are with Doc Chris Jones, good friend, right? And we've worked together in Mastermind, one-on-one coaching, some other stuff. But now when I go visit my sister out there in Foxborough, we make a point to have a legendary breakfast together before I leave. So You've been on the show a few times, I think.
Yeah, a few, if a few is 3 or more. Yeah, a few.
Awesome. Well, you're back. I think we've actually probably dug into this topic before, but Zig Ziglar used to say that repetition is the mother of learning, and I'm sure your thoughts on the topic have evolved. And maybe it might be, believe it or not, someone's first time listening to Better Leaders, Better Schools. I don't know how that's possible.
I don't know if that's gonna happen.
It is. It does. And somebody reached out just the other day who just started listening to the show, and they're like, "That mastermind thing sounds pretty cool. I want to join, and I'm gonna use my own personal resources." You told me to, and I thought that was wonderful. And I said, "Well, why? Like, why now? Right? And this kind of thing." And I guess she's coming out of another degree, right? So we love to collect degrees, and I think a lot of the people who end up joining the mastermind are learners and want to consistently grow, look for that leadership edge and that kind of thing. And she's sick of doing it alone, right? And what she said is she has a lovely system. She's in the charter system, lovely, lovely system. But you still get sort of a groupthink or the fishbowl, right, type of perspective. And that's a value we provide. There's people from all over the US, Canada, and the rest of the world. And you get, tons of diverse perspectives. And it certainly sharpens your saw, your sword. Any other S words come to mind? Do you have a favorite S?
I don't have a favorite S word, but I do have
Shotgun?
to
Do you do sawed-off shotgun?
thought off 2 S's. See, you asked for 1, you gave 2. I do have to, you're talking about the mastermind now, and it's not just about, and this is speaking about your mastermind, or the way you set it up, our mastermind. I would even go as far as to say that, it's not about joining the mastermind thing or a mastermind thing, because a lot of people out there love to use that word. And I go to different things and I run into different people and I hear them use the word mastermind. And so, of course, because I'm curious, I dig into it a little bit. And their idea of a mastermind, or the masterminds out there, the other masterminds, still pale in comparison. And I feel like I can say that because I've been in the mastermind for quite some time. I've been in your mastermind, the Better Leaders, Better Schools mastermind, for a while.
What, like 8 years, you think?
Oh,
7?
it's since 17, right? So 8 years. It's got to be 8 years.
That's what I thought.
And it just never gets stale, I guess is the way to put it. And it's not like these other masterminds that are just, I'm not trying to insult anything, but like drive-by masterminds I think of. Your mastermind is so much deeper, the Better Leaders, Better Schools mastermind, with the book studies, with the conversations, and with the camaraderie, where sometimes things in life come up, and I've had a couple spells where I've been away from the mastermind longer than I'd want to be, and I noticed that. I noticed that in my performance, my day-to-day thinking. So it's definitely a growth engine for people that want to move forward in just life. Not even just your career, just learning for your own personal betterment.
Yeah. Well, Gene, he talked about that he felt like he became a better husband, right? Joining the group. And of course, improved his school leadership as well. But that's the thing, everything I teach, every framework, every tool, it always starts with the leader first, And I think that's because in most school leadership spaces, you're last, if we're honest, right? It's students, and focus should be on students, teachers, and the scraps, and they're tiny little morsels, not much flavor or juice left on them. That's what school administrators get. And what I try to sort of preach and evangelize is this idea that if you're waiting for somebody else to sort of pick you and say, Chris, Doc, like now's your time, we're going to invest in you, you'll be waiting forever, right? And they call it self-care. They don't call it district care. And that's an important distinction. So I do want to get to the critics to cheerleaders, but since we were riffing on Mastermind real quick, you talked about it being like a growth engine. And yeah, I don't know if it's like within the last year or maybe last 18 months, but what's something you've been able to maybe do or accomplish that possibly you don't think you would have been able to do without that kind of support?
Oh, there's a number of things, and just the creative thinking to do school different has been big for me, with different ideas I've had, different creative ideas. But we all run into difficult times, and I've had a little bit of a difficult time this past year and a half. where I am right now. And I think the support of the mastermind has helped me weather that. And this is going to dovetail nicely into critics and the cheerleaders, because we all have critics, and the masterminds has helped me keep that perspective. And when you talk about repeating this topic of critics and the cheerleaders and how my perspective on it's changed, well, the mastermind has helped with that, to where I see it as twofold now when we're talking about that. But so that type of support, to even bounce ideas off of yourself where something is happening that is not right, for you to say, it's not me, that this isn't right. And these are other experienced, well thought out people that lend an objective view that have helped me move through and reflect on me and improve on me, even in the face of adversity. And then, I mean, that's without even getting into, because we don't have 2 hours to do this, that's not even getting into the tools that you offer, and how this summer's work with my other admins, we're going to be using some of these tools and walking through some of these tools together to really take some of these changes that we've initiated this year and take them out for a ride and really see what they can do for the school and the students.
Yeah, for you guys, I have planned a couple new sort of tools that'll help you align your personal leadership in life and then your professional one. So I think you'll look forward to that. And then another sort of like quarterly planning tool, which I've done stuff like that before, but it includes a team scorecard to really get a pulse on if you've set up your team for winning or for success. And I think often we feel like maybe they already are set up for success, or we've hired good people and that kind of thing. But upon a little bit of investigation, you realize, oh, that was just an assumption. I actually don't have, a real robust plan to take these people to the next level. So I know you'll love that too. But yeah, you mentioned critics to cheerleaders, enemies to evangelists. This is something that you've lived and you've experienced, you could teach on. I want you to talk to me and the person listening, Ruckus Maker listening or viewing, and how would you describe it to us like we're in 4th grade, like critics to cheerleaders 101.
Yeah, sure. We all have critics, and the key to working with critics, the first step is to actually hear what they're saying. And the way I hear what critics are saying is to think one thought to myself when they're talking to me. What if they're right? Everybody's criticism, or when people tell things, that old adage that when somebody's telling a joke, they might not completely be joking, and that's why they're telling a joke if they're like giving somebody a hard time, that there's always a truth behind it.
Yeah.
But when somebody's criticizing, there may be that little bit of truth behind it. And so I always talk about you have to listen to them, and you have to keep an open mind that you're not the only one right. And when you're doing that, you have to affirm with the person that in the end, you both have the same goal based on whatever it is they have an issue with. If it's, if you're in school and it's sports and it's playing time, if it's a grade that they're getting, if it's some type of consequence that they receive for an action that they did, or something to that effect. Parents often, well, they always do, but parents act out of love for their student. And one of the things I learned early on is one of the first things that comes out of my mouth when I'm just discussing something with a parent that's upset. I let them know, I say, hey, look, you're not here. It's not about a grade. It's not about getting a better grade. It's not about getting more playing time. It's not about getting rid of a consequence. True, those may be outcomes that they'd like to see, but they're there because their most prized possession seems to be experiencing discomfort. And they seem to be suffering in some way. Now, the extent of that suffering, that's a whole nother discussion. But as soon as I say that and I say, look, we're both here, and you're here because you love your student, and I'm here because I'm trying to help your student as well in the end. It may not look the same, but that's what I'm trying to do. And you can instantly see the parents relax. You can see their shoulders drop, to where you can now have a conversation where you move on to the next step, where you both work together and collaborate to get to the result or solution that works for the person involved, that person being the student. So those are the first two things. You have to listen. You have to make sure you're working together towards the same solution.
I love that. I mean, what if they were right? What a powerful question. And honestly, if a ruckus maker took that from this today's show, right, and just applied that to all the criticism they get, throughout the week, what if they're right? And it's not in a what if they're right to minimize my leadership or play small, right? Because there's a distinction there. Maybe we should talk about it in a second. But it's a what if they're right because I'm not always right. My way might not be the best way. Actually, if you're any good as a leader, your way probably shouldn't be the best way because you hired people smarter than you, more experienced or whatever, and surrounded yourself with A players. So that's another sort of thing to reflect on too for the ruckus maker engaging with this content. So that's really great. And then what I heard you say, in the parent example, bringing people together, it's really saying that this isn't a us versus them scenario. It's actually just us. We're on the same team and we actually both want something great for your child. That distinction's huge. I would even do, I don't know if you've ever done this, I would even do with parents, especially something happened. Maybe it was their kid who was going to get some type of consequence or another kid was involved or whatever. And I would just listen and I would literally take notes on a whiteboard with the parent watching. Something beautiful happens when you're on an emotional roller coaster and really saying some crazy stuff and you can see what you're saying. That's why it's also powerful in negotiations. I think the guy Never Split the Difference. Chris Voss, I think is his name.
Chris Voss, yeah.
I don't know if it was him or another FBI negotiator, but that mirroring, right? When you're negotiating, you just repeat the last 3 words somebody said and then shut up. If they've said something really in poor taste, or inappropriate, and then you just slowly repeat it and be quiet, there's that cures it almost 99% of the time.
So powerful.
So, yeah. But so I'd write down what the parents wanted, bloody murder, right? Put it on the whiteboard. And I would take them seriously. I wouldn't be making fun of them. And then I would also, write down per the student code of conduct, what kind of consequences are reasonable, right? And then we would look and have a discussion, right? Okay, so we can't chop the kid's head off. Now what are we gonna do, right? Right. That one's not on the table. But anyways, have you ever tried anything? I'm curious.
No, I've never written it out on a whiteboard. I do the mirroring because I really like Chris Voss's work. I love that book, Never Split the Difference. But it's interesting because I see it as, because some people, it becomes a power struggle. It becomes about questioning your leadership. And the people listening to this, if you don't journal or reflect on decisions that you've made during the day or important decision or important interaction, then you're missing out. You have to do that. That's first step. But this really comes down to, and what encourages me to ask that question is the idea of shame. And, Brene Brown does so much on shame and how powerful shame is, but it's avoiding shame by asking that question, because the last thing I want to do is go home that night after a contentious meeting or an argument or where a decision went wrong and journal about it or reflect on it and realize that they were right. The critics were right, but I was just too stubborn, because how often, now let's be honest with each other, right? How often have we not asked that question, and have we gone home, we've reflected on it, and we've had to come back the next day or the next week and say, man, I really screwed that up. That's an awful feeling. I don't want to feel that. So I'd rather be there in the moment and say, what part of what you're saying is right. And when you're talking about being quiet or shutting up, I like doing that. I mirror in my leadership meetings. So when we're having meetings, I'll throw something out there that we're going to talk about for a topic. And I'll throw it out there. And then what I'll do is, when somebody says something, maybe the second or third person says something, I'll repeat their last sentence. And then they'll look at me and be quiet, because, that's the principle. We've gotten over this in my leadership meetings, but they'll be quiet for a second. I'll go, I'm just thinking out loud, but what else did we have? And I'll let it go on. And it's a really powerful thing to do, because then everybody's actually thinking, is that really being said? Or what if that other person across from me is right? So it kind of spreads.
So riff a little bit on the idea of like when you ask that question, what if they're right? It's not about, imposter syndrome or playing small or, questioning every decision you make as a leader. How do you get around that?
Sure, it's because of perspective, right? We like to think about different perspectives. Everybody brings their individual perspective to every situation. So there's no way that I can have all the perspectives. And if I really want to get to the best decision about something, I have to take into account other people's perspectives and get away from I'll say it, my narrow vision at that point, and sometimes even tunnel vision. Even if it takes that shakeup to get me out of that and realize that this other person has a different lived experience, they have a different valid opinion and context that they're bringing to the table that I might not be aware of. A really good example is when our school went out for COVID and came back, we went through a massive demographic change and we became a much more diverse school. That typically when you become more diverse, it grows a little over time. We were out of school when that growing occurred. So when we came back to school, it was like, bam, we had a completely different student population and we struggled with that. And so one of the things I ended up doing is because I struggled, meeting after meeting, incident after incident, I struggled with trying to get everybody's perspective and understand their content and their lived reality, because the reality that students were living in the hallways, I didn't know what that was. I could guess at it, but based on their race, their sex, their religion, their belief, or anything like that, it was different. So I ended up forming a parent community. It was a BIPOC parent advisory committee or principal advisory committee that was designed to get the students' lived experience through what they were reporting to their parents so that I could start to get that. That's not me saying I don't know what I'm doing. That's not me saying I'm not a good leader. That's me saying, look, I need more context here if I'm going to be a good leader. And that's the same whenever you have somebody criticizing what you are doing. They're coming from a different context or a different perspective that you really need to investigate before you dismiss it. And in that investigation, that's when you find what things happen. But that's, it's funny, that's the flip side or the other side, you've kind of uncovered it a little bit, of the idea of turning critics into cheerleaders. And that's the personal side. I'll stop rambling there for a minute if you want, before I go on to that, if you have anything.
I just think what I want to highlight is the importance of curiosity and empathy, right? That's really what you're talking about there in terms of the student and parent experience. And a leader who stays curious, who realizes they don't have all the answers, they don't even need to have the answer, but what they need is a curious mind, somebody who can uncover the truth, that can get to the answer, that knows directionally what is correct. And if you do that time and again, I think you'll probably earn more and more trust, and people will start believing, that you walk your talk, right? Versus just trying to fake it out there, and then everybody knows, right? So it's kind of funny.
It is funny that you said that, because I actually had some of the parents say that to me, that they didn't understand their kids were sitting around. And like when people's names were coming up, they were like, no, Dr. Jones is cool. And the parents said to me, now we don't know why they think you're cool or why, they like you. And I'm like, well, wait a minute here. But they said and they said it was because I'm honest, and what you see is what you get. And I'm consistent, I'm predictable. They know what they're going to get in dealing with me. And, it's what it is oftentimes we take things too personal. And it took me, and I wrote about this when I was writing about feedback, and how when we're giving feedback, if we're empowering people and we're giving them feedback, we have to personalize the positive feedback and depersonalize the negative feedback. And what I didn't realize, and this is what evolved my thinking on the critics to cheerleaders, is that when we're looking at criticism, we take it personally. For whatever reason, we personalize it and we think they're attacking us. And if we set our mind to depersonalize that criticism, it opens the door for us to be able to investigate it and be curious, like you said, because that's, questions are as important, if not more important than answers, because that's what leads you to getting to where you need to be. And then, then time for personalizing it will always be there when, after you've gone back and forth with this person and you come to an agreed solution, Okay, personalize that all the time. Hey, look what we figured out. Because, yeah, I did that right. That's the time to personalize it. But before that, you really have to take the personalization out of it and depersonalize any criticism that comes your way. Because, yes, some people are nasty, but you're not doing it just to go after you. And until you get over that fact, you're not going to be able to really open up to it.
Yeah, that's good. Reminds me of there's a Zen parable about the farmer and the horses. You ever hear that one?
Is it the farmer's son and the horse?
Well, yeah, eventually it does become that.
I
So,
love that parable.
yeah. So the too long didn't read version, a number of things happen. There's a farmer, his horse runs away, right? And his neighbors are like, oh, that's so terrible. And he says, maybe, right? Then the horse comes back with 10 other horses. And the neighbors are like, oh my gosh, right? Now your net worth, right? Your value of your farm, everything. You're the luckiest farmer in the world. But to this, he also says, maybe, right? I think after the 10 horses, then they need to be like, trained and broken. And so maybe I think his son is like riding the horse and one of those wild horses kicks him off and he falls, breaks his leg. Oh, terrible news again. Farmer, maybe. And then basically the government is going out there and drafting young men, right? They come to the farm, but they can't take a young man with a broken leg, so he's not drafted into the army, doesn't die in war. Neighbors are ecstatic, and again, farmer says maybe. So I think that kind of like in the middle sort of response too, can be good. Like with all feedback that you get, not to get too high or too low, because so much of it's out of your control. They're just words at the end of the day. And nobody's going to remember them in 200, 300, 400 years. So why are you so stuck on it, right? You know what I
Right.
mean? Nobody's going to care. And that's perspective, right? But I think it's helpful. So before the break with sponsors, and then we'll get to your books with Isabella, is there anything else you want to say on critics and to cheerleaders?
No, I think that pretty much covers it. Just the idea of listening, collaborating to come to a shared conclusion, and you do that by, having that empathy that you talked about and being curious and asking questions, but also that backside of it, the other side of the mirror, so to speak, where it's internal and it's just the idea of depersonalizing what they're saying, so you can get to the personal aspect of doing something positive together.
All right, cool. Well, this is a great time to take a quick break to get some messages in from our show sponsors. And when we return, we'll talk about Isabella and the storm and the unexpected gift. ODP Business Solutions, formerly Office Depot Business Solutions Division, has been a trusted partner for schools for 30 years. At ODP Business Solutions, we're by your side to meet your evolving education needs. Remember that feeling when you wanted to upgrade your learning spaces, but the budget said, maybe next year? Here's what most people don't know. ODP Business Solutions doesn't just offer competitive pricing. We give you access to negotiated cooperative contracts that maximize every dollar. Want proof? We helped the Baldwin School District transform their entire campus while staying under budget. How? By combining smart design with smarter purchasing. From essential supplies to cutting-edge tech, from sustainable cleaning solutions to flexible furniture, we're your one-stop shop to do school different. And the best part, you can get it all from a single supplier. That helps you simplify ordering and streamlining budgeting while staying compliant with easy access to cooperative contracts. However you want to advance, ODP Business Solutions has 30 years of experience helping districts like yours get ahead. Visit odpbusiness.com/education to learn more. That's odpbusiness.com/education. Let's talk results just for a second. Dan was burned out and on stress leave. Now he's leading a thriving school and mentoring others. Demetrius joined the Ruckus Maker Mastermind when he realized his district wasn't going to develop him. And he went from AP to national blue ribbon winning principal. And Kellen, she just landed her first dream principal job, thanks to the coaching, support, and community she found inside the Ruckus Maker Mastermind. It's not a course, it's an experience, it's a commitment. If you're ready for elite level leadership growth, weekly coaching and mentorship, and a proven flywheel to solve your biggest challenges, you can apply today at betterleadersbetterschools.com/apply. The Mastermind application takes about 3 minutes to complete. We'll be in touch to set up a call to make sure the Mastermind's a perfect fit PD opportunity for you. And you can apply again at betterleadersbetterschools.com/apply. Teachers love the support that IXL provides in the classroom, and ruckus makers love it all as well, because IXL also gives school leaders meaningful insights on every level. Put your finger on the pulse of student performance with IXL and its dashboard to drill down to see progress and growth for individual students. You can even customize reports to hone in on the information that matters most to you. IXL helps ruckus makers make data-informed decisions that will benefit their students' growth goals. Get started today at ixl.com/leaders. That's ixl.com/leaders. All right, and we're back with Doc Chris Jones. He's been on the show a number of times. I love every time I get to talk to him. First half of the episode, we really talked about an idea that is really quite a beautiful idea if you dig into, like, how do we turn critics to cheerleaders? And now maybe you can see.
Oh, look at that.
Got your books, Isabella and the Storm, Isabella's Unexpected Gift. Fantastic work. I've read them both. Ruckus Maker approved. I think where I want to start, you wrote it with your wife, I think, right? Her name's on the book. Yep. So tell me about that process, because, and remember, she might watch, she might listen.
And just to lend context, right? We're talking about perspective. She's an English teacher. This really, I don't know if I told you this. Do you know the background story of the first one? Why I even started this?
Let me pretend that I do and maybe mess it totally up. But I feel like this was a story that you guys would tell each other, like during summer vacations or something, right?
Close.
And you always wanted to put it into print. Okay.
Yeah. When we were dating, she lived probably about 20 minutes from me, 25 minutes from me. And she's the early to bed, late to rise person. And I'm the late to bed, early to rise person. And so I would leave her house and I wouldn't be on the road 5-10 minutes. She'd call and say, all right, I'm in bed, so tell me a bedtime story. And I'm like, what? Like, what? So I would tell her the story, and I'd make up the story. And it was about, because she's a beach person, it was about this girl, the seashell girl, we called her, that lived by the ocean. She lived in a cottage, and she would make fine jewelry out of these seashells that she picked up on the beach. And this guy always kind of flitted in and out that was trained to be a knight, and so it was set in medieval times, and it was like a romantic thing, and they would go their separate ways, and they'd always come back to get it. Said and done. So I didn't write these down. I just make them up on the fly driving home. Yeah. And for the longest time, I was like, man, I should just write these. Can I write a young adult book about these? So I got to writing. Before I know it, I'm at like chapter 8. I'm like drowning this. I wanted to give it to her as a gift. So I said, you know what I could do? Why don't I just make like the first chapter into a children's book and start it off? And if she wants to continue that with me, I give it to her as a gift. And then she's a published author and all this because she's the genesis of the stories. If she wants to continue, great, we can keep doing that. And if not, then then whatever. So that was Isabella and the Storm, and it's about the two of them meeting, and it's about belonging. And sometimes we go through this world and we don't have that sense of belonging, that tight sense of belonging that's very important to us. Mental health wise, you can tie in all kinds of SEL things with it. But
sure.
So I did that. Got it published, gave it to her as a gift, and she looked at it and she was like, oh, that's good. I want to do it again. So the second one, Isabella's Unexpected Gift, I said, well, I got this idea for a second one if you want, and here's the framework. And she gave it back to me, a week later, and it wasn't the idea I'd put down. It was completely different framework. It was and all this, and it was all written out. And so then she passed it to me. She said, you go ahead. She goes, I want it to be about an attitude of gratitude because it's so important to be grateful for everything we have in life. And it's important to not just be grateful. We can go back to this after if we want, but it's important to act grateful and to change that into acts. So she then gave it to me. I edited it, added some things, took some things away, gave it back to her. She did the same thing. We sat down together, got to where we wanted to be, and then I worked on some of the formatting, then got it approved by her. And we published Isabella's Unexpected Gift.
Yeah, talk to us about why attitude of gratitude is so important, because that's another sort of leadership foundational tool. And if you're smart, you'll use it a lot. There's a lot of principals. There's a lot of teachers that you wouldn't think they enjoyed kids or education. If you mention the word gratitude, they might break out in hives and you'd have to call an ambulance. It seems like they're very far from this attitude of gratitude. Why is it so important to you?
I think it's the idea that it would be so easy to focus on the negative things we have going on in our lives, focus on all the little issues that come up during the day or the week, and miss the opportunity to be grateful for the people that we have in our lives, grateful for the opportunities that we have. I'd be lying to you if I said that every day was Skittles and unicorns as a high school principal. But I can't.
And breakfast with Danny, legendary breakfast with Danny.
I can't explain to you, though, how grateful I am to have the opportunity to serve in this capacity, have the opportunity to have the impact that I have on people, because you know what? Not everybody gets to have this opportunity. So I'm grateful for that. And I'm grateful for people in my life. And it's not enough to just say that. And that's kind of the gist of the second book. You have to show that. So how do I show my gratitude to the teachers that are in those classrooms every day, all day, working to impact those 25 to 30 students all day, every day? How do I do that? And so how do teachers show their gratitude to the students? And now, something you said that was important, it's important because if somebody knows you're grateful for their presence in your life, they will go the extra mile for you.
100%.
They will do the extra things no matter how difficult it is. And that's where I almost said learning. It's not even about learning. It's about growing. And it's about becoming the best version of you possibly can. Because if you're trying to coach somebody up, if you're trying to bring somebody along and they know that you're grateful for them in your life, they will go that extra mile. They will do better. And they will become better at whatever it is they're trying to do. And they'll go through hardships to do it, which is the only way we know to grow. Right? If everything is easy, you don't grow from it. It's when you struggle and fail that you get better from it. And I have a really personal story about that affects me that I can get into, but I'll let you go ahead first.
No, keep going. Let's hear it.
One of the things is I'm incredibly, and you know this because you know me, but my relationship with my boys, and we call our family Team Jones and all that.
Yeah.
And I am incredibly grateful for my two boys, just who they are as young men growing up and things they're doing. And a memory just came up through Google Photos that reminded me a year ago, my youngest was wrestling. They both wrestled. My youngest was wrestling in a tournament, and he wanted to join 2 different divisions in the tournament. And he ended up wrestling 7 times that day. And typically the limit is 5, just because it's too much physically for people. But he wanted to wrestle both divisions, and he wrestled a couple, and then he lost 3 in a row. And after each one, you go over the things that you win or that you lose. And we would talk. And after the 3rd one, I kept checking in on him, like, how you doing mentally? How you doing mentally? Because that's so important. And that can transfer to everything we do during the course of the day, your mental state and how you're weathering things. And I could tell with the last one, it was difficult for him. He welled up a little bit, and I said, "How you doing, buddy?" And he said, "No, I'm fine." And I grabbed him, I pulled him close to me, and I said, "Your eyes are telling me a little different. Let's talk about where we're at." And he went on to win the rest of his matches that day. But he talked to me about that afterwards. We've talked numerous times about it, how he said he always knew that I was in his corner, and he struggled through those, and he knew that was a piece of his growth that he needed to get to where he is today, which is a vastly improved wrestler. The same has happened with my oldest, who I can remember in middle school, he needed a math tutor. And I can remember the look on my wife and I's face when he said, "I want to be an engineer." And we were like, you know that requires math, right, buddy? And he said, "Yeah." And we said, "Oh, okay. That requires like the math that math people say is math, not just like the math that dad stopped."
The real math.
Yeah. And he goes, "Yeah." And so I have always expressed to him the grind, we call it, and how hard he works. He stays after, he does extra things. And he got into his first choice for college to study electromechanical engineering with a minor in physics and a minor in aerospace engineering. Like, what? And we were talking about it the other day, and we thanked me. He said, thanks for always just thinking I could do it and always being there and kind of pushing. And that's meaningful to me. And I don't think they would have done that if both my wife and I didn't show that we were grateful for just whatever they did to push themselves every day. And so transferring that to education, right, for the ruckus makers. If you're not tangibly doing things for people to show them that you're grateful for their presence in your school, in your circle, they will not push through those difficult times. And I'm here to tell you, there will be difficult times no matter what you do. It's just the matter of fact that you need people in your circle practicing gratitude to help you get through them.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing those stories. You know, they're quite personal, but deeply meaningful. And you could have the same impact on your teachers and students, right? Because your boys' experience was just really being known and really being seen in those moments, right? And you're providing feedback that was specific and helpful, and it's going to stick with them forever, right? And you can do that with staff too. So super appreciative of it. Like I said, Isabella in the Storm and Isabella's Unexpected Gift, Ruckus Maker approved. Check those out. And I'm curious, like, is this going to turn into sort of like a Star Wars Empire? You know, you've already gotten 2 out. Like, what do you plan on doing more?
It's funny that you should say that. So there may be another one in the works.
Yeah.
That has to do with self-confidence. And my wife is crazy about Christmas. And so it may have something to do with self-confidence and Christmas.
I hear a Hallmark movie coming out of this one, buddy.
And then we want to make sure, because we have Team Jones,
Yeah.
we can't forget that we have the dog, who
Right.
we named, because we're this level of geek, we named Indiana. So he's Indiana Jones.
That's fantastic. Wonderful. I think my last question, like book related, and then we'll kind of wrap up the episode. But, you know, you've written books for school leaders, right? So let's just call them adult books, right? Have you written picture books now too? How was the process, different from you, or what did you learn either about the process or about yourself?
Oh man, you had to throw yourself in there, huh? Well, it's interesting. The process is interesting because I don't know if I'd call all school leaders adults. I don't think I'm an adult myself. Then you say adult book, but no, the process for that was published by another publisher. And so I didn't have a lot of, I wasn't in that process a lot. So I understand the process of the editor sending it back to me and me going back and forth and rewriting, which I repeated with the children's book with my wife. I'm going to struggle with that, the next one, because I have another book that I'm almost done with on leadership that I'm going to do myself. So that's going to be editing and things. That's another process for that. Children's book, because it was with my wife, that process was much more personal with the editing, and it was handled with more care, I think, on both ends, where you don't want to say, scratch that, what's wrong with you? Where you're really being thoughtful about every little thing you do, but it's a fulfilling process. It's like, yeah, we did that. We don't just have to write a leadership book that people do things from, and there are lessons in books that don't explicitly call out lessons with like, okay, stop reading here, do this now, try this exercise, but instead they have other lessons that can be applied in them. So it was, while both were fulfilling, my leadership one being the first one, it was like, yeah, I'm published, that's pretty cool. These were more, I don't know if impactful is the right word, because I think they're all impactful, but this was definitely like learning needs to start that these types of things, like I mentioned self-confidence coming up, but with gratitude, with a sense of belonging, that needs to start much earlier than we're hitting it now. And so I think that's why I would say impactful, because it's really aimed at the creativity side and opening up minds that way. And I think, unfortunately, when we try to be serious adults, we lose that creativity because we become nervous about letting our creative side out. So it was, And they were both very fulfilling. And of course, the idea that I get to do something with my wife like that.
You'll have to remind me because I've been preparing for the Massachusetts State Principals event for the summer. Yeah, it's super cool. I'm really pumped for that. And today I tested some stories that I'd like to tell there with a smaller group, right, of school leaders. It went really well. But actually, two stories I wanted to tell, I ended up not telling at all. And I told different stories based on just watching the crowd. And it's smaller, so I did some back and forth, just asking them what they needed and that kind of thing. But one of the overarching comments, I guess the question was, the person wanted to be a creative, open-minded, curious leader, flexible too, and less type A and rigid and black and white and rules and this kind of thing, and was just trying to sort out how to make that shift. And I don't have the time to tell the stories right now, but like the punchlines were rule number 6, A, take the work seriously, but not yourself too seriously. And then B, which seemed to blow people's minds, was this idea of, yes, there's metrics, right? Student achievement, attendance, certain things that schools get graded on. And then you get to make it all up. Really, you do, right? There might be a school district evaluation. There certainly is for every principal. There might be stuff in the papers and all this kind of stuff. And to some extent, those things matter, right? And do you realize you're playing a game where you get to write the rules to the game, and you can write the rules to the game in a way that feels easy and fun and energizing, and you can win, right? You could set yourself up for success. And so then I paused and I said, that's a question to reflect on. Like, what are the rules to the game you're playing? And if you can't actually tell me what those rules are, do you realize you're playing somebody else's game, right? I think that's a good riff.
That's a good riff.
Yeah. And so I didn't even give you the stories and stuff and how that connects to, because I'm going to bring to Massachusetts what I call the Do School Different scorecard, and how you look at different categories of your school. How do you make the shifts from old to new, right? But I think this bigger idea, like, what game are you playing, right? Why are you playing Chris's game when you should be playing your game? It's not that Chris's game is wrong. It's Chris's game. It's not your game, right? You could take and you could borrow, but yeah, so I want to keep developing that idea. I think it's chef's kiss.
I'm telling you.
Salt Bay. Little Salt Bay. Remember Salt Bay?
When you did that, that was, if you can't come up with the rules right now, like you're not going to go home and study them. You can't come up with the rules right now, you're playing somebody else's game.
Yeah.
And so, right, loop that back. So what does that mean for the people that get uptight thinking that you're taking away their leadership power or they're playing small? They play their rules and they play their game. Well, if they can't mention the rules, guess what? You've got a false idea that you're the one playing the big game because you're playing somebody else's game. Man,
Yes.
that is.
I'm actually writing stuff down because now I'm like, okay, I know the bridge from the first story to this game story and how that relates to what I want to do this summer. So,
No, that's fantastic.
all right.
When we're talking about while you're writing stuff down, while we're talking about gratitude and the importance of gratitude, it can come in many forms. But if people listening to this were to stop for a second and think about somebody important in their life that they're grateful for, or that somebody that's in their life a lot that maybe they haven't expressed gratitude for, and think back to a time where they were working with them, doing something with them that's memorable for them. If they go, because we oftentimes get hooked up on this gratitude thing, if they go to that person and they say, hey, Danny, I was just thinking the other day of when we were sitting having breakfast, and it wasn't at the bar where we were sitting and took that selfie that one time. It was over in the corner of the door, and how we started talking about different things. And when we were eating, we were talking about business and things like that. You said to me, you checked on my meal and asked me if I enjoyed it, if it was good. And that just resonated with me and stayed with me because I was so grateful that you stopped our conversation because you were concerned that I was enjoying the meal rather than worrying about what you were going to tell me. If people just said something small like that, what that does for the person that's receiving it is a simple act of gratitude. It doesn't have to be difficult. It doesn't have to be oh my God, Danny, I love you so much, and I'm so grateful you're in my life. It can just be selecting something that sticks out in your mind. Because what else is that if it's not being grateful for that experience? If you weren't grateful, you wouldn't remember it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I appreciate you sharing that. It's cool. And I can't wait for our next breakfast. Probably in June. I'm coming out there before July. So certainly when I'm there for the event, but hopefully in June too. All right. You've been on the show. You've answered the marquee question. You've answered like the dream school question and that. So I've come up with a brand new for Doc Chris Jones only.
Here we go.
Look
at me.
So yeah, you know whose game are you playing? It's okay.
Yeah.
If you could whisper one truth. No, actually, I'm going to change it. Imagine you can text all school leaders around the world, right? You're going to send them a text real quick. And you don't want it to be a really long text. Make it a short and to the point. And it's before their day begins, right? So, because you said you like going to bed and waking up early. Did I hear that right?
Yeah,
Okay.
I get up at 3:45 every morning.
And most of the other principals are happy, cozy, bundled up. And for some reason, you're awake. And you're crafting the ideal text to go out to all school leaders tomorrow morning. What does your text say?
Realize that no matter what you do today, you will be the difference in somebody's life. Be a good difference.
That's right. Cool. Well, we covered a lot of ground, as we always do when we connect, Doc. And so of everything we discussed today, what's the one thing you want a ruckus maker to remember?
I want you to remember that when you're looking at people that criticize you, don't run from it. Face it and use it to grow yourself as a leader, because there is always the chance they are right, but that means that the outcome will be better, if not personal.
Hey, Ruckus Maker, thanks again for pressing play. I hope you enjoyed this show as much as I enjoyed recording it. And before you go, if today's episode shifted something for you, where you want to do school different or you have a new idea about education, then I want to invite you to subscribe to ruckusmakers.news. That's our newsletter. And you get 3 new opportunities to do school different every week sent to your inbox. It's trusted by over 5,000 school leaders. And if you want to reimagine education within a traditional setting so that you could create a campus experience worth showing up for, subscribe for free at ruckusmakers.news.